The topic of our panel discussion today, I think, was already prefaced in the opening remarks that we heard this morning as to what the next priority or the next frontier for financial inclusion in India is. All of us in the room are aware that India has stellar numbers on access and usage, but on critical variables from credit fragility to access to emergency funds to access to insurance, uptake of insurance, the numbers are, there's a long, long way to go. And hence, we are in this panel discussing what is the pathway, what is the roadway to financial resilience for the next 1 billion customers or for the Bharat market. And for that discussion today, I'm joined by my stellar panel. We have very intentionally put this panel together to reflect the different product streams that perhaps need to coalesce in order to build ecosystem level momentum towards resilience, moving away from a one-point focus on access and perhaps adoption. So to begin with, I'll address all of my panelists here, and I'll come to you with one question. Maybe, can you give us a small overview of your journey and talk about what resilience means in your context and what it means for the customers that you are serving? To you, Shalini, first.
Thank you, Trisha, and thank you, IMA, for giving me this opportunity to participate and learn from a lot of you over here. So resilience, the word resilience, I think I would say as a lender, we love customers who have resilience, who demonstrate resilience, right? We are into lending. So from a lender's perspective, we look at our customer segments who demonstrate resilience in the form of ability to service their loans. That should be the top priority. On time, that's how they demonstrate resilience. Resilience in the sense that you take care of eventuality if there is some kind of a financial disruption, if there is a health hazard in the family, any kind of emergency, job loss, but you still ensure that your repayments are on time, and that's what resilience is all about. So from a customer's perspective, this is what resilience is. From a lender's perspective, we also ensure that we build an organization which is resilient, right? Since I take care of risk management is all about building resilience in the organization. Ensure that you diversify your lending, your portfolios, you have a good set of customers spread across everywhere, there is no concentration risk, and should there be some kind of an eventuality, some kind of a crisis, you know that you are safe, you are not left off guarded. So that's what I think resilience is to me as a lender, for the customers as well as for the organization.
Thank you, Shalini. Coming to you, Gautam, I know you are extremely passionate about the customers that you serve and the products that you build. What does resilience mean for you?
Thanks, Trisha. Firstly, delighted to be here. I mean, we are thinking about resilience. I think the problems that the rest of the panel are solving, I think is contributing a lot. But the main issue that we are focused on is what happens when a person is unable to work anymore. And so and this is a huge problem. I mean, like for instance, pensions, just as a benefit, is only available to people in the salaried workforce, traditionally, not only in India but elsewhere. The problem is that between 85 to 95% of the workers across Asia and Africa and some parts of Latin America are in the informal sector and therefore are excluded from pension benefits. Now, the problem is as big or as important, we think, as climate change. Okay, so I mean, it's happening around us. People are aging rapidly. I was about 40 only yesterday, and now I'm suddenly 61. So a big issue is what happens when the world is sitting with 2 billion elderly in 2050, or let's say India is sitting with 400 million elderly, and say 300 million of them will not have any means to support themselves in old age. So I think from our viewpoint, I think the what is happening on through insurance or credit access or even savings for known future needs is helping to build resilience. But I think ultimately we all need to realize that, like, the world is getting warmer. I think all of us are getting older, and there will be a stage where we will need to support ourselves with our own savings. And I think for us, resilience along the way is critically important, but I think with an eye on the last 25 years of our lives. And I think that's what is important to us.
Thanks, Gautam. Nishchay, coming to you. So, as at JAR, I think what you're primarily focused on is augmenting savings and building on existing natural habits of the customer segments that you serve. Like Gautam said, savings is extremely critical and perhaps the first step to building resilience. But in your line of work, how are you interpreting it and preparing your customers for it?
I started JAR as an accident. It was not like an intentionality to that. It was not like we wanted to build a company. There are 5 ideas. This looks more interesting. Let's pick this one. It was not the case. This was purely out of the need and observation that we had during COVID. What happened during COVID was the entire world went into the pandemic and all of those things, but it also exposed one more thing, that is how fragile personal finance is. People hardly had any savings. Even if they had any sort of savings, that was not really in liquid form which they can mobilize easily. People didn't have access to credit and people were not insured. And it put immense stress not just on physical health but also on their mental health, because they were not having enough money. And that was the epiphany point for us to think of building a platform to enable people to achieve all three, that is access to good savings, credit and insurance. But you can't crash into habits, right? You have to slide in and you have to help them to build that muscle over a period of time. I personally feel the problem with the whole financial services industry is the industry is built by highly financially educated masses and people, and they expect the rest of the world to behave like them. So the existing products expect consumers to be rational, reasonable, and sane. And those are the three things. You have billionaire founders telling that don't buy home, invest in market, it will give you 8% returns versus 3% rental yield. And people will happily buy homes because the kind of scars and traumas are different for a growing population. People who are coming off from socialistic era to capitalistic era. So you need to build resilience from the basics. That's where we think we need to enable them. That's the need of savings. It's like, let's pick an asset class which people understand. Don't impose your first world definitions of financial well-being on common masses. That's where we stand. We are more empathetical and we resonate with consumers more. And we are not even, one of the things that we have seen is, and whenever I speak with anyone from financial services or the venture capital industry, right, the moment I explain JAR and savings, the first response default is, my driver can use this. And it's like, by Infosys employees need this. It's like, it's still, there is a lot of gap in understanding India. And the moment you understand that there is a penny is dropped and you will start building products which is more relevant for mass India, is what I feel.
Absolutely. If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is it's necessary to build financial discretion before training them to expect returns or training any customer to expect returns. So discretion, with that coming to you, Pawan, how does it play out in your side of the industry?
I mean, for me, I think for me, customer resilience is just 3 words comes in my mind. Actually 4. I mean, they are very interrelated, and that 4 words, I think, define the entire thing that we have done in the last 7 years since we graduated from IMA, either it was FinShots or Ditto. Financial world is highly complex. What Nishchay was saying was correct, that the world was entirely actually crafted by the highly skilled financial professionals, and they expect masses to behave like that, and people want simple things. So I think first is simplifying things. That is very important because people don't understand jargons. If you want people to, and once people understand from you, then comes loyalty, some trust. And that's where we figured out that when you build trust and loyalty, automatically it becomes a community. You know? So we saw that simplifying small financial things, financial news, which InShorts was all about, created a community. People started loving it. And based on that trust and loyalty that was developed, you can sell anything in finance you want. We could have become a broker, we could have become anything we wanted. Insurance was just came out of nowhere. It was not planned. It just happened because pandemic was there and we couldn't crack other products. But yeah, again, so in insurance also it's a highly complex product. Like what we realize that, especially health and term insurance, which is sold in the market, online it's only one company that is selling as a monopoly. Nobody else has able to do it. Is not able to do it till now, on a scale I'm talking about. So the reason was people don't trust. People don't trust because there are agents everywhere. So to build that trust, what we saw that there is a need for people to have a certain kind of understanding and trust on a platform, which I think through FinShort we delivered through the trust on Ditto Insurance, which was I think just 4-year-old, and a lot of these people started scale, and we saw that we were never expecting that trust could come online. We are just pure online player till now, and yeah, I mean, it's the second largest online distributor now, just after Policy Bazaar, and it just happened because of just trust. That nothing else. There is no strategy behind it. It's just pure trust. People believe that these guys are doing something good work. They helped us understand finance through FinShort, so let's try them. And just that resilience, what you're talking about, right? People have that loyalty and trust on that platform. So till now, as I was saying yesterday also, till now we don't have app. We have never built an app, and just a website still. And I think it was a dilemma in our head also. Okay, first when we started IMA, you need an app because customers will use app. Is actually you can do it through that also, but yeah, through website also. I mean, we scaled it up. So yeah, I mean, I think you can build that trust and loyalty. It can work out.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that both you and Nishchay are thinking of looking at the first step to resilience as solving this information gap with the customer, building trust, and perhaps advisory, so that you're kind of building some kind of capability to judge choices and options for yourself, and so that can actually put you on the right path and pace you the right way towards financial well-being. I think it's very, very interesting. Thank you. Shalini, coming back to you, I would request you to maybe double-click on some of the specific directions that you have taken in terms of targeting resilience for your customer constituency. And I'd like you to maybe specifically focus on I think one of the largest underserved groups in this country, which is women. And I know that you've been doing some very strong work in that direction.
Okay, so coming from trust, right? Pawan spoke about it, Nishcha also spoke about it. So our organization, Godrej Capital, we are about 4.5 years old organization, right? So when we all joined to launch this financial division of the group, the one thing which we had or which was in our favor was the brand has got a trust in the market, right? The Godrej brand is known by everybody. We are now opening a financial service arm of the group. The trust is there, and it was very important for us to carry it forward to the customers. Now we are into lending space. We give loans, various kind of loans, personal loans, secured loans, unsecured loans, business loans, housing loans. So one very important area for us was ensure that we carry forward trust in all our products to the customers, come out with products which are simple in nature, which can be comprehended by everybody. Now, typically these home loans, business loans are very similar, right? So what is that differentiating aspect which we can bring in our products when we are offering to our customers, so that we also ensure that it is fair. We have to be a responsible lender. Today we heard a Deputy Governor's speech also in the morning when he was here, that you innovate but do it responsibly. So all our innovations have to be responsible innovations, and trust is very important. So we have to get the trust of our customers who are going to be borrowing money from us. So we focused on that, customers. For resilience, what we thought was, let's build products, let's give flexible repayment options to our customers. So when I talk about customers, I'm talking about gender agnostic, right? Whether it's women or male, everybody should have flexibility in repayment. So one of our flagship product which we launched is called Design Your EMI, right? Typically in home loans, when it's an under construction, you actually give loans as per the stages of construction, right? So you do not know what your EMI is going to be till such time full loan is disbursed. So how do you ensure the customer knows what is the right amount of EMI he or she will be paying, and how does it tie with the customer's finances? How do they ensure that it is within their repayment capability? So Design Your EMI was one product, one flagship product which we launched, and it was, it really got a lot of recognition. We really got a lot of customers, and people were really happy. So we took this forward to all our customers in all our products also, whether it is MSME business loans, whether it is women entrepreneur loans. So flexibility of repayment, you want to pay X amount of EMI for first 2-3 years, you can pay that. After that, you want to increase it depending upon what you anticipate your financial position is going to be. Similarly, if you are paying very well, I mean, if you demonstrate a good repayment behavior, you can be rewarded for that also, and that the amount of reward which you get, it could be in any format, kind or, money, which you can use it for any of your financial needs. Then if we talk about the other tailored, customized products for customers, we said that if you want a payment holiday on a particular month, for example, March typically is a month where you are paying taxes, right? So your net take home is very low. So if you want March as one of your months where you can take a break from your EMIs, that can be one. So work on the flexibility. The apprehensions were, if we allow this flexibility, will the repayment behavior of our customers change, and will we get hit by more delinquencies? That was the one risk which we carried. But today we are 4-year-old in the organization. Our portfolio is immaculate. And it's not that everybody took this. Prudent, there is some amount of prudence also when a person borrows. You also look at your financial needs. So it's just that we have all kind of products. You choose what works for you. So that's something which really worked for us. We have extended it to the women entrepreneurs also. So Design Your EMI is something which I think really helped us. And that's the kind of an innovation which we did. I think responsible innovation. We explained the terms, how it works. All of a sudden, it should not happen that there is a huge amount of burden on you because initially you are paying lower EMIs and then all of a sudden your EMIs go up. It should not happen. Your EMIs are, you have not expected. At least you can do some kind of a financial planning, and that also helps in resilience.
Excellent. It's almost like you provide a ramp before you try to build on their behavior, basically. Great. So Gautam, coming to, and we discussed this backstage, pension there's a high opportunity cost associated with it. And I know that you think that people don't take pension seriously enough, despite I think the pivotal role that it eventually plays in a person's life. Can you talk about some of the experiments, some of the directional steps that you have taken in centering pensions as a pathway to resilience?
Sure, Trisha, thank you. So, pensions is complicated and difficult to explain to individuals. I don't know, all of you should have a pension account. I don't know how many of you are actively saving for old age, right? So I didn't save enough for my old age. And unfortunately, now the only way that I can make sure that I'm not poor in old age is by aggressively smoking, right? So that's my strategy to avoid living too long in poverty, right? But it's equally difficult to convince governments, So one is, most developing countries are still very young at a demographic level. So it's very difficult to get somebody to think about retirement. The second is, a farmer or an Uber driver is not thinking about an age at which he will stop working at 60 or 65. So the terms like pensions and retirement don't resonate with a lot of people. The normal response is, "Saab, jab tak haath pair chalenge, tab tak main kaam karunga," right? Even for governments, I think the tussle is always between the urgent and the important. So if you meet Secretary DFS today, he will agree with you that this is a great, important thing. Or similarly, a secretary in, say, Rwanda. But the problem always will be, कि यार, today I have to decide, I'm part of a committee to decide the chairman of Bank of Baroda. आज उसमें काम करना है, but कल से, or maybe next week we'll do. So it's easy to let another year slip by in the status quo, right? And equally, I think third is the financial sector. So, I mean, we are so focused on the next quarter, and therefore we are so focused on the here and now, that we just are not focused on what is going to happen 30 years out from now. Okay? So I think that's a big challenge. What we do is we work with, so we help to build the NPS in India. We are similarly helping other countries to build up similar systems which are more inclusive, more digital. But the challenge is, so if you take a step back, one of the strategies that we've adopted is we try and understand what the problem is. But one of the brilliant things is that almost all developing countries today have set up very good DFS and DPI infrastructure. So you'll have national IDs, which are digital, biometric based. You have digital payments being adopted universally in many countries, like Kenya, M-Pesa, everybody uses M-Pesa, right? So if the ecosystem exists, including in India, and the products exist, like the NPS or whatever, why is it that 500 million people in India are still marching towards old age, with zero retirement savings in their pockets? And that's true in other countries. So what we've done is, when you look at the problem, one is, the problem is around the fact that finance is still, the sales process is very pro-rich. So a lot of the financial sales happen either because of tax breaks or using agents, and none of these strategies work for the poor. The second is a lot of complication at the level of KYC and a lot of friction, which adds a lot of cost, a lot of transaction cost. On the demand side, and I think that's where I was talking about the fact that the three of you are actually solving a critical problem is, again, during the pandemic, when we met people and said, कि साहब आपकी तो दुकान थी बॉम्बे में 30 साल से, how come in 3 months you're walking back to Bihar or whatever? And we found that कि आप पैसे नहीं बचाते थे, and people would say, नहीं, I would save, but then why don't you have any money? Well, my child was unwell, my cow died, I had an accident, and these are all insurable risks. And we realized that the reason people remain poor is because they don't have access to insurance. So they end up using savings or expensive emergency loans for risk management, which is a terrible strategy, right? So they save some money, then a risk hits them, and they use up the past savings, then they go out for an emergency loan for the balance amount required, and that it mortgages future surplus income in favor of repaying a loan, right? So they can't save because of वो loan pay कर रहे हैं. So what we feel is that if we can focus a little more on the unique needs of the population that we are doing. So if you look at it, on one side you've got this shiny new infrastructure, the India Stack kind of stuff. Fantastic, it's world best. Okay? On the other side you've got 500 million people who can, 300 million let's say, who can afford to save but are not saving. Then you can start thinking, what is it that I should do at the level of communications, technology, etc., to bridge the supply and demand gap. And if you can do this effect, let me just give you one quick story. I mean, I've already confessed that I have a problem with brevity, but one very quick story is, like in Tumkur, okay, 15 years ago, in 2010, we were running this program, and with UIDAI, we actually started some enrollments for women in Tumkur district. And then after a few months, we went back and we found there was this one woman, maybe a couple of years later, we found this woman was saving regularly for her retirement, and her saal paisa dal rahi thi, and she was saving enough. And more importantly, she was indexing her contributions. She was increasing her savings every year. So we went and met her, and I said, Sairo Ben, aap ye kaise kar rahe hain? Her response was, Gautam bhai, I run a small goat farm. When I came to know about your pension, I joined the account, the savings. I then started nominating one goat as my pension goat. So every year, jab Eid aati thi, I would go to the market and sell the goat, and whatever money I got from the goat, I would put it into my pension account. And I said, but aap index kaise kar rahe hain? Who told you to increase your savings? She said, I'm not doing that actually. Last year I sold the goat for 3,000. This year I'm selling it for 3,400. So there is an automated indexation which is built into her savings. We never told her you should use a goat to save for old age. But I'm just saying, if we can do things well, and if people have the confidence and the trust, and they understand what they've got into and the commitment that they're making to themselves in the future, I think we can have very remarkable outcomes. Somebody has to stop. You should be stopping.
No, I think you were making some very interesting points. So I do not think it would have been fair to stop you. But Nishchay, coming to you, and Gautam has already talked about savings, really. So from you, I want to understand the customer journey. When, as a solutions provider, you are targeting uptake, you're targeting adoption, you're targeting recurring revenue. How does that customer journey sort of change when you target customer resilience as opposed to simple adoption?
It's a two-step process. One is when I'm making someone to start their journey of savings, what is the story I sold them, and post that, what is that I'm doing with them so that they stick to the journey, stick to the habit. The first and foremost, when we did a market research, what we figured out is that intent to save is very high across population. The second, the friction, the challenge was that people are not financially literate. Every platform available in the market today is only in English, filled with jargons which people don't understand. If they open a trading app, if they see futures, they will think it's horoscope. And insurance, again, very complicated products. And no one teaches you money in this country. It's a taboo subject. You don't discuss over dinner table. You don't discuss with your friends. You don't discuss with your colleagues. You don't discuss with your partners. You don't discuss with your parents also. Because we have that eternal fear that if I tell that, okay, I'm having so much money, what should I do this? कल आके पूछेगा मुझे पैसे देने, I can't say no. So it's very difficult. So we figured out, if you remove this friction point, build a platform which is very simple and make the journey very delight. There should be a dopamine hit across every stage of the journey. People will start investing. And once we simplified where you can start the journey of savings in gold in just 45 seconds. And the reason we picked gold is something which cuts through all social stratas. The way the indexation was done on gold is the best example out there in the market. And I personally believe all older civilizations, whatever is good for you, converts it into culture and hands it to you and asks you to follow blindly. क्यों भगवान गुस्सा करेगा नहीं किया तो? It's as simple as that. It's basically good for you. If you follow most of the culture, it's just basically subah wake up early, take shower, pray, go to work. You're planning your whole day by doing this. Instead of telling that it's good for you, if you tell this is the way it should be done, people will simply follow it. So we embedded culture into the product from day zero. Instead of calling it portfolio, we call it locker, tijori. Instead of emphasizing on value, we emphasize on grammage. Because in North India, if you go, kitna sona hai? 5 tola hai. No one says that 5 lakh ka sona hai. In South India, it's mere paas 4 sovereign gold hai. So we emphasize on those cultural aspects and we gamified the journey to a certain extent where we celebrate milestones. For example, you pick any investment platform globally, say you are investing in 5 mutual funds, SIPs. Say if you don't open the platform for 5 months, after 5 months if you open, it will simply say, ye tera portfolio hai, red hai, green hai, that's it. But in our case, say you did not open the platform, say you're on daily savings program, you did not open the platform for 5 days also. If you open the platform after 5 days, we say, since you last opened, you have saved 5 more times. And you have collected so much more. You're doing good, you're going right. Like life is tough, at least someone has to cheer you. And that's what we do that. We handhold the consumer, we celebrate milestones, we give him that high five which is required. We put him on that track. Someone needs a personal coach at every level. And we try to be that without being pretentious. Another problem that we figured out is you can either be pretentious nor patronizing. It's more like a buddy rather than your teacher or your pretentious principal from Mohabate. It's neither both. We are simple friend where we simply help you. We are on the sidelines, we cheer for your success, we enable and we take steps. For example, if someone is very consistent over last 6 months, next time when he opens, hey, you've been very consistent. You have said, say 100 days straight, 100 rupees. I think it's time to make it 110 rupees per day. So we give them. So an average user starts their journey at say 28 rupees per day. By month 30, they get to 150 rupees a day. That's the journey. It's because of cultural nuances, embedding linguistic, language plays a crucial role. We offer the platform in 11 languages. These are the things that we did innovation. And second thing is content, the way you deliver content. Sadly, if you go look at any advertisement of an insurance, right, they show you a doomsday scenario Or they will show you another scenario where a 40-year-old is jumping into river to swim because he can dare to do that because there is an insurance, and if something happens to him, his family is taken care of. So you can't sell a 25-year-old to buy insurance by showing a 40-year-old jumping into river. So you need to build that journey for the consumer in a language that he understands, and that's where the innovation is. All our work is more around behavioral economics than bombarding him with index like market है, red है, green है, Trump साहब ने ये किया वो. Simple. Be at it. Be consistent. The world will reward you.
Excellent. Some very, very excellent insights there. So, and I think my takeaway is build the journey slowly rather than bombarding them with information or doomsday scenarios. I think excellent. So, Pawan, I think as we've been alluding, insurance continues to be a push product in India. Not trusted, not understood. I think sometime back we were discussing that there is insurance has never been demonstrated at scale in this country, and hence there is very little customer buy-in. How are you perhaps solving for it?
So see, before touching that point, I would give you a story, like how Ditto actually became what it is right now. Trust and loyalty I already talked about. The first thing when we started off, we all friends started in IMA was, okay, we want to build something. We wanted initially to become a stockbroker. Okay, what are the people not understanding first? What are the problems that we are trying to solve? That's the first question. So before even going to any financial this thing, we saw that the articles that Money Control writes, Economic Times write, all those financial, we are not able to understand being a graduate from IIM Ahmedabad. So what common man can understand? There, the idea of InShort came, just simplify for the layman. That was the first step. So when it comes to insurance, when we were launching Ditto and the pandemic, we have to launch something in insurance. The idea was, okay, what product first we will choose? We thought, okay, health and term looks decent. Motor, not sure about. We decided we'll go with only two products, life and health. So now the thing was, what problem are you trying to solve? Okay, you have a good community. How you are going to sell insurance? Insurance is a push product, as you said, right? So we were like, okay, how I will buy insurance? What my opinion was? We were like, first of all, I don't want spam. Stop spamming me. That was the first idea. I think there is nobody till now in the insurance who sells spam-free insurance. Till now we have spam-free. Nobody can sell. And again, the second point is it's an inbound. We decided, okay, you book a slot, we will call you at your designated schedule. That was like at that point unheard. Obviously, we never thought it would scale up. It was a completely counterintuitive idea, anti-VC idea. Because the first thing you go to VC, we went to one of the VC and he says, why are you not enabling payment journey on the website? Why are you not allowing people to buy themselves? We said, we know what will happen. What will happen? Insurance is so complicated. The most of the payment that is assisted, auto-assisted, they are buying themselves, are actually they are actually purchasing wrong. They don't understand half of the things. They don't understand which waiting period is there. They don't understand maternity is not covered. They will buy, and then later on they will come, oh, I bought myself. We tried that experiment. It doesn't work. It's not just us. We have seen that in the industry also. You need assisted buying, somebody to guide. So we realized that, okay, the question of assisted buying is, somebody buying themselves is gone. We will not enable payment journey on website. We will just put a content, simplified content, what insurance is. Health and term, clear. Book your call. We'll see how it happens, how it goes. From there, we saw that, okay, the community, the trust was already there with insurance. The people started booking it. Now there comes the biggest problem. You could do it as a founder. We took a lot of calls. We sold a lot of policies. But how would you scale? How do you bring the same kind of thing? Because the problem with insurance is, first of all, not just push. The trust deficit is a big problem in the insurance industry. Why that is there? Because again, everybody is selling a different thing. First, you feel that am I getting the right product, right? Second is mis-selling. A lot of mis-selling. Why it happens? It's very simple. You came for something else. I wanted to make money out of you. I just told you something, and later on you realize that it was not a correct advice. So it's a big problem, and that was where we solved. I think that was something that we are really proud of is we hired advisors saying there is no target internally. We will judge you based on the quality metrics. We will judge you how well you advise people. Again, that was very contradictory. We literally saw people, not just, we saw people saying you are leaving money on the table because you have to chase customer. Customer came, reviewed their policy and went away. So a lot of the calls that we were getting on our advisory was the people who just wanted to review their policy. They don't want to buy. Now, are you going to survive like that? That was a question. We had no option. We said, let's go ahead. Whatever people want to review, I think it's still a good thing. People maybe buy that. What essentially happened that free reviews, just helping them, people positive word of mouth, it automatically converted in a lot of, future sales. The same people, they have this gratitude towards that platform. Again, it connects to the trust. Those free things that you did, like people will say, Ditto didn't spam me even after I took advice and I went away. And not a single call. They didn't chase me. The first thing is on our website, we take your number, you will not receive any call until the designated spot. I can promise, I can say whatever website you go for insurance, health and term, the number goes to the website and call starts. Sir, are you looking for? Aap dekh rahe the? That's how it typically starts. That I think we solved it well. Now, at 900 employees, we kept that very strong that we have a very big quality team. I mean, it's a cost. Honestly, it's a cost. 120 quality people. They are not bringing in money. They are just quality auditing. Whether the calls, there were any deviations. Was somebody trying to mis-sell? Or somebody was trying to, somebody came for just review the policy. It's a good policy, but you try to paste, which is generally, you have kept that, it never happened, but yeah, again, is there in charge. So when you have strong such things, the customer pool also understands, oh, Ditto is not trying to fool me, right? I think after this, one more thing that we did was, what is the cover amount you need for health insurance or term insurance, let's say. You can make a lot of money by suggesting 1 crore ka term plan or 1 crore ka health insurance, and let's say if your income allows 5 CR, 10 CR of term insurance. We decided we will not do that. 99% of the claims is well below 10 lakhs for health. We were like, stick to 10 lakhs only. We will not charge 15, 20, 25 because that again brings you that, oh, that platform is just trying to extract money from me. So all those small rules, build that stickiness, resilience, and it's just a small things. And again, if some VC was on my table, honestly, I think Ditto was impossible. I can write down anywhere you want. It's impossible. We are here only because there was a bootstrap company backing us, and there was zero pressure of sales. We built this. We almost doubled every year, but profitably doubled. But it was impossible. But the biggest learning for me was gratitude for a platform is huge if you are really trying to help them, not extract from them. It is. I think no. It's very hard to tell any VC that I will grow only 2x this time. Please allow me. I can grow 3x. I will first grow only 2x. So it's very hard. So yeah, for us, that is how it is built. It's very slow. We have kept it like that, and we know we can grow fast. But we're like, no. The way you will grow fast will completely break the resilience, the trust, the loyalty, everything. Because people like, what happened suddenly to this platform? They are just trying to sell me. Suddenly you are chasing it because you want growth. So yeah, a lot of LinkedIn posts, etc. I read fast and furious, make it till break it, whatever, My thesis, our thesis is completely opposite. Go slow. Focus on few things. Don't diversify. Don't focus on multiple products. Don't launch every product every single month something. No, we don't do that, and we don't believe that. So yeah, that is my take.
So I have a small follow-up question because then you'll understand why I'm asking this. Is that changing? Do you see that kind of attitude changing from the funder or the investor side, or is it still the same?
Sorry?
So the grow fast and diversify. Do you see any change to that? Any shift in that attitude in the current climate?
In you're saying customer side? Investor side. Oh. See, Nishchay might answer this well. Okay. I used to get barrage of emails, messages, LinkedIn, etc. from VCs. But now I think word has spread that they don't want money. So they are not reaching out to me or anyone. which is fine. We will not raise because we don't need. But yeah, I mean, I think some VCs are understanding. Definitely. I have met few of them who are very understanding. But again, the pressure of giving them return is, it's Nishchay can tell. I can't.
Sure. See, you can take advice from everywhere in the world, but if you decide to act on it, it's your decision. That's what it is. You have to live with its consequences. I personally believe there's two types of times: peacetime and wartime. In wartime is when there is bull market is wartime is what I believe, because the resources are there for you to grab it. If you optimize for the right vanity metrics during that time, you can amass all your resources, be it partnerships, capital, people, all of these things, and users. All in peacetime is when it's the current times. It's winter where you sit and optimize for the right metrics. You ditch the moment you see a winter, you need to ditch all your vanity metrics. And we took a call back in the days that we'll make the business exciting and P&L boring. And now I proudly tell everywhere I go, our P&L is so simple and so straightforward that an engineer like me can understand it. And stick to those things, it will work out. I mean, as I said, it's easy to blame the external world, but if you have decided to act on it, it's your decision.
Yeah, I mean, see, in no way I was trying to say that, I mean, it's your choice. I mean, obviously,
It's a choice.
it also depends on what kind of mindset you have, right? Like, some people can definitely, as you said, in some market they will go ahead and be fast, and it's a competitive advantage in itself. But I mean, the kind of people we were, we realized that, I mean, we want to have some, everything as is slow, and we can't go fast. We thought it's not in our DNA. So yeah, I mean, that's why I think it depends on what kind of business also, even the kind of business we are in. I can surely say it will just break the entire fabric. You might build, but it just break the fabric of trust.
Sure, and very, very fair. So yeah, now Shalini, I'll come to you and I'll probably explain a little as to why I was asking the investor question. In your experience and your line of work, what are maybe the top two things that need to change in order for resilience to become an ecosystem priority, as opposed to different sets of folks building in silos and meeting certain targeted needs of the customer?
So I think, what you just touched upon, that all of us are working in silos, right? Somebody is focusing on insurance, somebody is focusing on pension. We are into lending, growing the economy by, giving loans to support businesses, help them grow their businesses. Things are happening in a very fragmented manner. Of course, there are certain institutions who are working together and they're trying to offer all products together on one platform. I think that is what we need today. We have a regulator, we have insurance companies, we have people working on pensions, so we have pension schemes. We have people who are simplifying the loan terms and conditions and the insurance literature. There are people who are offering consultancy in terms of improving the financial literacy. So I think all of us need to come together, not an easy task, but at least if there is one platform, for example, we were just discussing, we've got a platform called Nirman, which we have built, where we are encouraging a lot of entrepreneurs to come on that platform. And if we can have a lot of partners also coming over there offering their services, whether it's insurance, pension, tax consultancy, technology related products, offerings. So if all of us come together and every information is available on one platform, I think that's where that's very challenging, of course, but at least it will break that kind of silos which we are working in. And we were also discussing, right? You were saying, can we have a global platform? So first of all, let's get one platform in India where everybody is, offering their best services, and everything is very transparent. I think transparency, simplicity, this is what is the ask, and this is what even the regulator, you call it the central bank, the RBI, they are also talking the same language. give simple terms to your customers, don't complicate stuff, um, uh, provide access to them. Information should be readily available. So, for example, the loan agreements you guys would have seen, some of you, if you've taken loans, it runs in pages, right? And who reads them? You just sign all the pages. So that was the first thing, for example, we looked in. Can we simplify it? Right? Can we reduce? Because a lot of those terms they are just there. I mean, lenders seem to be protecting themselves. Just in case tomorrow, if anything happens, okay, legally we are covered. But is it really making any sense? And that's the reason why, RBI said that you should have one statement, which is called a key fact statement, which should summarize all the things which are there in the loan agreement and which are important for the customer to understand so that he or she knows the decision which they are taking. Similarly, if we can, as I said, the regulator is trying to play a critical role over here. And if all of us, come forward, make this kind of a platform, encourage people to come on this platform, I think that is where a lot of these problems will get solved. I think that's what.
Sure. Thank you. Gautam, same question to you.
Thanks. So, Trisha, in our experience, I think what we try and think of is replicability and replicable solutions. So we find that developing countries are very similar to each other, at the level of demography, governance, financial markets, inclusion, and all of that kind of stuff. So if problems are also similar of exclusion, then there may be some space to think of, replicability. And when we talk to governments, especially, I was telling you, when we talk to civil servants, we find that the normal knee-jerk response across the world is everything should be done, but nothing should be done for the first time, right? So what ends up happening is that if I go to Rwanda and I'm talking to them and saying, listen, we've just finished this in Kenya, this is what has happened, there's a much better chance of Rwanda saying, okay, fine. If it's worked in Kenya, we'd love to explore this, right? So today, we are engaged with maybe 8 or 9 countries between Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And we are doing this with a team of less than 20 people. Okay, and the only way we are able to do this is by, being clear of what is it that we really want to do. So if I want to, let's say, Rwanda was one of the countries which adopted the Pinbox platform and model. So what we've done is we've created a white-labeled pension tech platform which uses APIs to integrate the existing DFS ecosystem and the DPI infrastructure in any country. So our platform will integrate with national IDs for KYC, with digital payments, with custody banks, with product providers, and so on and so forth. And this creates a marketplace, a digital marketplace, that anybody then can access using any device. You could have a smartphone, you could have a feature phone, you can do USSD. So today in Rwanda, you can actually open a pension account linked to the national ID, complete your KYC in under 1.5 minutes. Okay? And as a result, pension coverage in 5 years in Rwanda has gone from 5% of the workers to 55% of the workforce. Okay? And so I think that one way to think about more ecosystem level or more systemic impact is to think about more collaborative actions. How can you get different stakeholders to come together on the same page? It requires advocacy. It requires show and tell. I mean, people need to be confident and comfortable. And I think that's a critical part to achieve systemic change. And if you can succeed, so if you can do what you've done in India, then there is a great chance that Bangladesh or Pakistan will look at what India has done and say, okay, this seems to make sense. They've done 7 good things. They've had 3 really mad, bad ideas. So let's avoid the bad, mad ideas and let's just run with the 7 that seem to have worked, or let's try and see how we can customize them. So I think this kind of an approach can achieve systemic reform and systemic change, which is what is required, at least in the space of long-term savings.
Excellent. So, and being able to demonstrate this level of impact also means you need room for experimentation at some level. Nishcha and Pawan, I'll come, both of you, I'll sort of pose the same question. So, when we talk about resilience, कि एक product नहीं बेचना है, you have to sell a suite of products that targets every need of the customer so that they're secure and they have tools for building and whatnot. Personally, I've been hearing this for at least, I think, 15 years. But somehow, it has neither fructified nor reached ecosystem level momentum. Why do you think that is? And what do you think needs to happen or needs to change for product suits to be to actually develop into these resilience building mechanisms?
See, we went with a simple approach that it has to be gamified. If you look at any financial platforms today, apart from, I will take the liberty apart from JAR, any platform you open, it will bombard every other option in the world onto you on day zero. If you say you log into ICICI Direct, everything is there from mutual funds to equity trading to futures, options, everything is there. The only industry which has figured out how to take one step at a time and a laddering approach is gaming industry. Say you install a new game today, in level 0, the kind of weapons you wield and the kind of demons that you fight is very simple. By the time you are level 25, you are switching between 6 different weapons and fighting with 4 different demons at the same time. So we need to figure that out for the saving and financial resilience also. You can't say you have to be resilient, you have to think of savings for today, you have to think of credit for today, you have to think for insurance for today, you have to think for insurance for tomorrow, you have to think of pension for tomorrow. It's too much of overwhelming for a consumer. So what we have done is, it's a gamified journey where you start saving. So once you start saving, then you unlock credit for him, because if you don't have access to credit, you're going to burn your savings. And once he has credit, you need to protect both your savings and credit through insurance. Because if you don't have access to credit insurance, you will end up in debt trap, or you burn your savings, or you will end up burning savings plus get into debt trap, both. So we have taken that unified one step at a time. For the first 2.5 years, we stuck single product, single focus approach we had. Today, our gold product is performing amazing. We are the #1 merchant on UPI today. We clock the highest number of transactions in the entire UPI ecosystem. We clock millions of transactions every day today, and we enable so many millions of people to save in gold every day. And that unilateral focus is what we wanted, and we felt that this has to be a movement. I keep telling, you just have to look at back in the history of how to go it forward. The reason Ganesh Chaturthi becomes such a huge thing was because you needed a place to congregate first to give them a purpose. So Tilak did make sure that the pandals were installed where thousands of people coming from all over. They gave him they hooked on to something that people already believed in, which was God. From when they came there, they said, oh, we need to fight against the British. It's one step at a time. You can't tell everyone that you have to fight against British, so come to this pandal. No one will turn up. So you have to find the hook and then move one step at a time is what we feel.
I'm really loving your metaphors as an aside. Pavan, the same question to you. What kind of collaborations do you think you are seeking in the line of work you're in?
See, I mean, mostly like what Nishya was saying about gamification. I mean, the kind of talk Nishya gave about gamification, it was me when I was just graduated from Ahmedabad about gamification. I was like full, pro on gamification that this will work. But I mean, for some reason, we couldn't crack it. In insurance specifically, if I talk about, right, I mean, the one question, the one challenge that we face before even going to collaborations, I mean, like, how do you market yourself? There are social media. We are now in a social media age. You want yourself to be, we have a lot of content, etc. But what do you write? I mean, how do you market? You just write, okay, what is term insurance? What is health insurance? What is motor insurance? I mean, one time you wrote, what next? That was a conundrum, that was kind of dilemma. That was a problem that entire marketing we faced in the initial years. Like every day you want to write content, you want to do something, whatever, you want to be visible. How do you do it? It's very hard. You have to be creative, but how much creative? The content is that much. So there comes the first idea that came it came from finance side only, that I think some of you might have seen the beautiful infographics. The FinShots, I think we not pioneered, I think it was, we got inspiration from some foreign companies, visual capitalists. We started in India, and that infographics became one way to educate people about some finance. Anything, it was, just about your industry or something. We started the same thing with insurance. Okay, we will talk about some companies that you are buying insurance, how much they are paying claims, etc. Making beautiful infographics. That was one way we thought, okay, we could market ourselves a bit. Then in content also, it was more like, you were not able to, I mean, you can't get new content, you can't teach same thing again and again. Then we realize, okay, whatever is happening in the daily life of a common, in our system, like customers did something, some story, you put it that. Now basically a lot of people take claims, right? You put that. And once you start doing all that as an engine, a lot of people, I mean, yesterday only I was just talking about, so we initially when we started, we thought we will do a lot of collaboration with all the small CAs, your people who deal with finance, agents, etc. And we will, through them, we will sell, you give us client because you advise them for financial mutual funds there. You are not great on insurance. Let's give us that lead and we will do it. Zero. It was a completely failed experiment. The reason is simple, people don't trust you. And after 4 or 5 years, when your ecosystem, you became a little big, automatically the emails started coming in, we really like your professionalism, we want to collaborate with you. Now I am okay giving my clients to you. Otherwise it was impossible. Now, I'm not taking the name of the company, but he's coming from some big company where he was passing. The simple complaint is there is unprofessionalism. My client is getting cross-sold something which I don't know. Taking advantage of. So I think when you, just shifting out of the topic, yesterday I was watching a video, why Switzerland became so rich. Okay, I was like, wanted to know, okay, it's a landlocked country, how it became so rich, I also thought, okay, because they were neutral in all wars, that's why they became rich. But the interesting thing was, obviously, they became a safe haven for all the rich people to put their money, and they know this Switzerland will not go into any wars, right? And in the worst of the worst time, they defended the money of those rich. Even in the World War II, the Jewish money was parked there and Hitler wanted it. And the trust that they built over those centuries and decades just compounded and they became huge. So here also we thought that, if we just keep on keeping this professionalism, automatically you have created an ecosystem where people start believing you. These guys, I'm just you say, Tata. You believe the name, brand name itself. So I think for insurance, simple, it's a very simple thing. You do it consistently for years, and that's the way. You will earn your name.
Adding to that, one of the things, the way they started their content strategy, we also did the same thing. We started investing heavily on content across multiple languages. Today we produce 350 plus videos across 12 languages, distributed across 23 channels. We generate about more than 100 million organic views every month. That is kind of a thing, like, why did you trust HDFC? Because every city, every new area you go, either you see a branch or a ATM. And we had the similar, like the new gen are a digital nomads. They travel all over the world sitting in their comfort of their couch. So it's like any channel, any place where they go, they should see something of JAR. And that's how we started the whole movement. It took 7 or 8 impressions on digital marketing to get a consumer. Now it comes down to 4 or 5 because they've already seen your platform through the content 3-4 times. So content plays a very crucial role. For them, it's a different content. For us, it's a different content. We make content around collective trauma. It's very fun when it's about collective trauma, like how you live like a king in the beginning of the month and like a beggar at the end of the month. So we make funny videos and all of those things where we slowly sensitize about the living realities of lack of financial literacy. And that's how we continuously push the pawn one step ahead
This is where I want to add something, what he said, different kind of content. It is very, very important to understand what kind of content you want to put. That's what we realized, right? When we started, we were like, why don't we do this, breaking news type of content through we had 500,000 subscribers through FinShop, why not? You could have become another InShots, right? That's where we draw the line. We don't want to become InShots. Because if that route you go, the only way you have to run is through ad impressions. We don't want. We just want a quality content going slowly and slowly. You build a base, and then over the top of it, you build a business, a quality business. So for different platforms, like for him, right, funny thing, we cannot do that funny thing. Once in a while, maybe, but it's a serious platform. Serious people read it, so it's that kind of decision you have to take very early.
Yeah, sure. And I think overall, listening to both of you, it appears as though that what your interventions are almost like a translation layer between the formal sort of systems, the insurance companies and other platforms, and the segments that you're trying to serve. And it's a very, very interesting take. This has been fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. I think if you know some collaboration can germinate within the folks that are on the stage and also across, sitting across in that section, I think we would have done maybe a tiny, tiny bit in moving the needle forward. Thank you so very much again to my guests and to all of you who have stayed throughout the course of the conversation.